This is a regular press conference by Minister Motegi. Over to you, Minister Motegi.
I have one point to make. That is regarding the visit of the Foreign Minister of Egypt to Japan. From the 2nd to the 5th of June, Foreign Minister Dr. Abdelati of Egypt will be coming to Japan as a guest of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On this occasion, we are scheduled to hold the Japan-Egypt Foreign Ministers' Strategic Dialogue. Egypt presently, as you know, is performing a role as one of the major intermediary nations between the United States and Iran. In April, I had a telephone conversation with Minister Abdelati centering on the situation in Iran. This time, in addition to broad bilateral cooperation, I wish to center on collaboration on the Iran and Gaza situation and other issues on the stability of the Middle East as a whole, and conduct thorough discussions. That is all for me.
Those with questions, please raise your hand. And once you're called, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and affiliation before asking questions. Kyodo, Onda-san. Onda, Kyodo. Iranian situation. Iran says it has suspended the ceasefire negotiations with the United States, while President Trump says that the negotiations are still ongoing. What is your take? Furthermore, Islamic Republic's news agency has reported that President Pezeshkian told Prime Minister Takaichi on the phone that he would try to make it easier for Japanese ships to transit the strait. What are the steps you have in mind, perhaps to further strengthen communications between diplomatic authorities? As you know, there are different press reports, announcements, almost every day, including the press reports and comments. Japan continues to closely watch developments around U.S.-Iran consultations with grave interest. It's not just that we are watching with grave interest. Japan strongly hopes that there will be an agreement as soon as possible. That is our strong hope, and we are making diplomatic efforts. And on the May 22nd, I myself talked to Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi on the phone, which was our 6th phone call since the start of the situations, during which I called on Iran to continue to exercise maximum flexibility and strongly urged Iran to resume consultations with the U.S. as soon as possible so that we can all secure safety of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Furthermore, during the Quad, on the sidelines of the Quad, we had Japan-U.S. Foreign Ministerial last week on the 26th, and I conveyed to Secretary Rubio that it was critical to realize U.S.-Iran deal, including stability of Hormuz, and reaffirmed a close cooperation between our two nations. In addition, during the Japan-Iran leaders' conversation yesterday, Prime Minister Takaichi once again demanded that ships of all countries, including those of Japan and Asia, be allowed to transit the Strait of Hormuz freely and safely as soon as possible. Positive announcements and comments they expressed, which I believe is positive. Japan will continue to make necessary diplomatic efforts with patience, including continued communications with Iran, so as to restore free and safe navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Thank you.
Next question, please. Azhar-san, Pan Orient News, please.
Azhari Pan Orient News. I will stay in the Middle East. About Lebanon, Israel has occupied a significant territories south of Lebanon, and that includes the heritage citadel of Al-Shukaif, where Israel has raised its flags there as if it considers it as territory of Israel, which means annexation. And France has condemned Israel for that invasion. What is Japan's position on that invasion? And also, Japan has an important principle regarding opposing the invasion of other countries and change the status quo by force. Does that apply to Israel or only to Russia? Thank you.
the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon is being maintained, and between the two countries, further dialogue is advancing. But despite of this, there are continuing exchange of attacks between Israel and Hezbollah. There have been casualties among civilians and medical staff, and civilian infrastructure destruction continues to occur, and I am seriously concerned. And I am very strongly concerned about expansion of ground forces, ground operations by Israel into Lebanon. I'd like to once again call that Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity be respected. In any case, all parties to completely implement the ceasefire agreement is something that we'd like to continue to call for. And was it the relationships with Russia? With regard to the regional situation, the situation differs from case to case. So a simple comparison is difficult.
Murakami-san, Hokkaido Shimbun. Murakami, Hokkaido Shimbun, thank you very much for having me. NATO's framework to support Ukraine. Japan has, and I have this question about Pearl. Japan has contributed approximately 2.2 billion yen to the NATO's Pearl prioritized Ukraine requirement list initiative to cover non-lethal equipment purchases. What is the objective of joining the framework? High-ranking officials of both METI and MOFA visited Russia on the 26th and 27th of May, where they requested for protection of Japanese companies and affirmed with their counterparts the importance of continued dialogue with keeping sanctions in place. While keeping sanctions in place, why is it that the announcement of Japan's contribution to Pearl was announced right after government officials' visit to Russia? What is the prospect for resuming Japan-Russia dialogue on the political level when Japan continues to support continued support for Ukraine and sanctions against Russia? Why we made a decision to make a contribution? To respond to that question, Japan has promoted support to Ukraine, including such support as a part of Japan-NATO cooperation in order to achieve a just and lasting peace in Ukraine as soon as possible. It is in this context that Japan contributed approximately 2.2 billion yen to a package that cover non-lethal equipment under NATO's prioritized Ukraine requirements list initiative. For the timing of our announcement, we announced the announcement had nothing to do with the visit by the government officials to Moscow. We announced because our coordination with NATO on the contribution was completed. It's not that government officials were involved in this. As for Japan-Russia contacts on the political level, we have no concrete plan whatsoever at the moment. It is true that bilateral relations face some difficulties, but communication is all the more vital when bilateral relations face difficulties. To appropriately manage our relations with Russia, our neighbor, Japan remains open to communications with Russia, including between diplomatic authorities. That is our attitude, which remains intact.
Are there any other questions? If not, we'd like to conclude the press conference at this point. Thank you.